Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the quiet town of Eldridge Hollow, nestled between rolling hills and dense woods, life unfolded at a pace that felt almost timeless. It was a place where everyone knew their neighbor and stories echoed through the streets like familiar songs. Children played late into the evening, their laughter ringing out as porch lights flickered on, while shopkeepers locked up their establishments, ready to greet another day. But beneath this serene facade lay layers of complexity, a simmering tension that had haunted the town for years. Each resident carried their own secrets, triumphs, and regrets. Eldridge Hollow had become a space where unsolved mysteries lingered, tucked away in old journals and whispered conversations. One such mystery began on a crisp autumn morning when the body of Sarah Lawson was discovered in an abandoned barn on the outskirts of town. She was a promising young artist, known for her vibrant canvases and the warmth she spread among her friends. Her loss sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community, forcing residents to confront the impermanence of life and the darkness that sometimes encroaches upon it. With no clear suspects and the townspeople in disbelief, the investigation unfolded slowly. Detective Mark Shepard, a seasoned officer with an unyielding resolve, was assigned to the case. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He could not let the artful spirit of Sarah Lawson fade away unanswered. As he stood outside the barn that day, he could almost hear the echoes of laughter and the strokes of a paintbrush, now silenced forever. What had transpired in this quiet corner of Eldridge Hollow that led to such tragic ends? The answers lay hidden, waiting to be unearthed. The victim, Sarah Lawson, was not just a name. She was a vibrant force in Eldridge Hollow. At 26, she had the world at her fingertips, a paintbrush poised to capture the beauty that surrounded her. Her long ebony hair framing a face lit by a radiant smile, she embodied creativity and enthusiasm, and her laughter had the uncanny ability to draw even the most reserved into conversation. Born to a family of modest means, Sarah had always been artistic. Her childhood bedroom was a kaleidoscope of colors, with walls adorned by her early attempts at painting fading impressions of starry nights, whimsical animals, and clusters of flowers that spoke of her youthful imagination. As she grew, so did her talent, becoming the town's beloved artist. Each Sunday, she would set up her easel in the bustling town square, creating masterpieces that seemed to breathe with life. But Sarah's life was not devoid of struggles. Lurking beneath the surface of her sunny exterior was a battle with self-doubt. Many evenings she would sit before a blank canvas, fighting against the noises that whispered inadequacy into her heart. Those closest to her knew this vulnerability, but also recognized her tenacity. She had begun curating exhibits in the local gallery, on the verge of making a name for herself beyond the borders of Eldridge Hollow. On the night she disappeared, Sarah had been gearing up for her first solo exhibition. The anticipation was palpable. Her friends touted her success, yet no one had seen her since she left the gallery, vibrant and hopeful, waving goodbye under the twinkling lights of the town. When news of her death surfaced, shockwaves rippled through the community, painting a town portrait marked not just by a loss, but by a collective sense of disbelief. Sarah Lawson had been taken too soon, and the questions surrounding her disappearance grew heavier with each passing heartbeat. The crime scene, Detective Mark Shepard arrived at the dilapidated barn shortly after dawn, the sun casting golden beams through the mist that hugged the ground. Memories of laughter and vibrant canvases seemed to linger in the air, tainted now by tragedy and unease. The barn, once a hub for local farmers, had succumbed to neglect, its wooden planks rotting and its roof weathered. Yet it held secrets waiting to be pried loose. As he stepped inside, the stench of decay assaulted his senses. It was a stark contrast to the freshness of the morning outside. This was a forbidden place, now bearing witness to unspeakable acts. The beam of his flashlight flickered across dust-covered hay bales and rusted tools, finally landing on the lifeless figure sprawled across the forgotten floor. It was Sarah, her crimson scarf a favorite accessory thrown awkwardly beside her. As if carelessly discarded, she lay on the wooden boards. The brightness of her clothing, a harsh reminder of how vibrant she had been. The scene was jarring. There were no signs of a struggle, no indication of forced entry, just the haunting stillness that preceded despair. Her pale skin contrasted starkly with the barn's shadows, revealing remnants of struggle upon closer inspection, bruises mottling her arm. Forensics arrived quickly, their presence lending a sterile and almost clinical air to the despair that lingered. As they began to disentangle the threads of the scene, Detective Shepard knelt beside her, taking in every detail of the positioning of her limbs. The faint scent of paint still clinging to her clothes, the untouched canvas resting by her side, hinting at the final strokes left incomplete. What had drawn Sarah to this place? What had happened in the moments preceding her death? As he inhaled the musty air, filled with questions he would soon set out to answer, he understood that the insidious nature of crime would require him to peel back layers of both evidence and emotion. This was not merely a case. It was a reflection of a town unraveling, a tapestry of life now marked by a dark silence. The early investigation. The initial hours following Sarah Lawson's discovery were a whirlwind of activity in Eldridge Hollow. Detective Shepard set up a makeshift command center just beyond the barn's entrance. A small cluster of squad cars illuminating the area like a beacon of purpose amid the encroaching gloom. Officers scoured the vicinity for witnesses, while forensics began to map out the crime scene, meticulously documenting every detail of the tragic tableau. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows that intertwined with the emerging heat of the day, Shepard started his interviews with those who had last seen Sarah, hoping to piece together a timeline of her last hour. He approached Mia Sanders, Sarah's best friend, who stood a few feet away, her eyes red-rimmed and glossed over with shock. "I can't believe this is happening," Mia murmured, her voice trembling. "We were so excited for the exhibition. She was so happy. I saw her just hours before. She was practically glowing." As Shepard listened, he noted the tension woven into Mia's words. She described Sarah's excitement and apprehension about the gallery showing, speaking of a heated argument the artist had with her boyfriend, Jason. Unable to contain her distress, Mia revealed the couple had been at odds in recent weeks. Their relationship strained under the pressures of ambitions and insecurities. "Do you think he could have hurt her?" Shepard asked, cautiously observing her reaction. Mia shook her head fervently. "No, Jason adored her. He would never do something like this. but he has been acting differently lately. With rising skepticism about Jason's role in the events leading up to Sarah's death, the detective scheduled a time to speak with him. He needed to dive deeper into the emotional labyrinth surrounding Sarah's life, tracing the threads that might lead him to the heart of this dark crime. Each interview brought new layers to the surface. Whispers of past relationships and rivalries illuminated the complexities of Sarah's world, indicating that the answers he sought would not be so easily uncovered. As dusk fell on Eldridge Hollow, Shepard felt a gnawing uncertainty. The tight-knit community had begun to feel like a web of secrets, and each person he spoke to seemed to represent a piece of Sarah's life, or perhaps a piece of the tragedy that had befallen her. In a town where everyone knew each other's stories, he understood that sometimes those stories were crafted to conceal more than they revealed. The dead ends. As days turned into a week, the investigation into Sarah Lawson's death began to morph from an eager pursuit of truth into a taxing slog through a maze of contradiction. Detective Shepard had conducted numerous interviews, yet every lead seemed to spiral back into confusion. Paths that appeared promising turned into blind alleys littered with half-truths and evasive answers. He found himself at the local coffee shop, a place adorned with art from Sarah's past exhibitions, where her spirit seemed to vibrate within the walls. Seated across from him was Jason Archer, Sarah's boyfriend, who had been cooperative yet visibly distressed, a nervous energy coursing through him. "I loved her, Detective," Jason said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'd never hurt her." With each word, Shepard could sense the unease roiling beneath Jason's grief. "We had our problems, but we were working through them. I swear, I was at home that night." Shepard scrutinized him carefully, searching for the slightest crack in his demeanor. "Can anyone confirm your whereabouts?" Jason stammered. I don't know. I wasn't with anyone. Just scrolling through my phone, listening to music." The detective noted the bartender overheard him saying he wanted to be the best for her, but now spoke of wandering home, alone in odd contradiction that left uncertainty. Days dragged on, and the interviews turned from relevant leads to disjointed stories that led nowhere. Residents in town began to grow restless, fearing a murderer lurked among them. The gated secrets of Eldridge Hollow felt like a stone wall, each brick representing hesitation and innocence colliding. As the investigation evolved, so did the landscape of grief in the community. People started to talk amongst themselves, spreading rumors that only muddied the waters further. Accusations against Jason emerged as whispers in the corners of the coffee shop and dusty hardware stores, casting shadows that made him the target of suspicion. Caught in the thicket of unanswered questions and dead ends, Shepard faced an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes, the deeper one digs for clarity, the more entangled they become in the webs of complex human emotion. He needed it to keep pushing forward, but every twist felt like a spiral into the dark. Ultimately, he knew that uncovering the truth behind Sarah's life and death required him to confront the jagged edges of the town's collective heart, a task that would be nauseating yet necessary. A break in the case. Weeks passed with no definitive leads, and the weight of Sarah Lawson's unsolved murder hung heavily over Eldridge Hollow. Detective Shepard had pored over the evidence numerous times, tracing each thread of Sarah's life but finding nothing solid to grasp onto. That fragile balance of hope and despair began to fade as he considered the possibility that he might never find justice for the young artist. Then, one dreary afternoon, a surprising call came through. An anonymous tipster had reached out to the station, claiming to have information about the night Sarah was killed. Shepard's heart pounded in his chest. This was the first flicker of light in an otherwise murky investigation. Meeting the tipster at a public park, Shepard approached with a mixture of skepticism and anticipation. The informant, a nervous man in his 30s wearing a faded baseball cap, shifted his weight from foot to foot as he spoke. "I wasn't supposed to say anything, but I saw her that night," he stammered, scanning the perimeter for eavesdroppers. Shepard leaned in closer, his attention piqued. "You saw Sarah? What do you mean?" "I was leaving the bar around midnight when I heard yelling from the barn. I thought it was just the wind at first, but then I saw a figure," he explained, his voice trembling. "It was dark, but it looked like a man, definitely not Jason. I could see him through the broken window." The man continued, his eyes wide with the memory. "Can you describe him?" Shepard pressed, his notepad itching to be filled. "He was wearing a dark hoodie, and he was angry," the tipster said, pausing. "There was something in his hand, but I couldn't see what it was." Then it went quiet, like he just disappeared. Shepard's stomach churned as the implications settled in. The identity of this figure could change everything, injecting new life into the investigation. But he needed more than a shadowy description. He needed motive, context, corroboration. Back at the station, he organized the information, digging back through past reports. The idea that another man might hold the key to Sarah's murder sent a jolt of energy through him. He was finally shifting from the quagmire of dead ends, his instincts rekindled by the faintest glimmer of hope. With renewed determination, Shepard began tracking down the details of that dark Figueres search that promised to reveal not just a killer, but also the pulse of a community hiding more than grief. The suspect. The flickering fluorescent lights of the Eldridge Hollow police station cast an unflattering glow on Detective Shepard as he hunted through old records. The anonymous tip about the shadowy figure near the barn had sparked an urge to re-examine every detail of Sarah's life and the people in it. With renewed determination, he turned his focus toward one name that surfaced repeatedly in discussions: Thomas Gray. Thomas was a local handyman, known for his skills, but rumored to have a tempestuous personality. Over the years, residents had exchanged tales of hangovers and confrontation that seemed oddly disproportionate to his size. With a past punctuated by bar fights, he was no stranger to trouble. But what caught Shepard's attention was a specific incident. Just weeks before Sarah's death, he and Sarah had clashed at a community event. An argument that had drawn attention from onlookers. Wanting to connect the dots, Shepard tracked down Thomas at one of the local hardware stores, where he was perusing the aisles with a distracted air. When Thomas noticed the detective approaching, the casual demeanor evaporated. He stiffened, a flicker of wariness in his eyes. "Detective," he greeted, his tone forced, as if masking anxiety. "What brings you here? What brings you here?" "I'd like to ask you a few questions about Sarah Lawson," Shepard stated, studying his face for any sign of guilt. "I understand you two had an argument recently." Thomas shifted, scratching at the back of his neck. "It was nothing. Just a misunderstanding," he said, with a nervous chuckle. "She didn't understand how hard it is to keep this town afloat with just my hands." Shepard pressed harder, recounting the details of the night Sarah was murdered, Tom's reluctance to provide specifics unsaid but palpable. "Where were you that night, Thomas?" he asked, his voice steady. "Home. Alone." "You can't think I would never," he stumbled over his words, and the detective felt the air shift. "Look, she was an artist. Some people just don't get along. It doesn't mean I." Shepard observed the tension creeping into Thomas's body language, a tightness around his shoulders, an eagerness to deflect. It was clear he was hiding something. "I've heard people mention you have a temper," Shepard said, watching for the reaction. Thomas shifted his weight back, his facade cracking slightly. "That's not who I am anymore." "I'm trying to change," he insisted, but there was an edge of desperation in his words. As they spoke, the pieces clashed, building a portrait of volatile emotions, possibly rippling beneath the surface of a seemingly simple life. Thomas Gray was by no means a guaranteed suspect, but the detective sensed a potential link between the heated confrontation and Sarah's untimely demise. With Thomas now firmly on Shepard's radar, the chase to uncover the truth of that night felt more urgent than ever. The trial, months of investigation, questions, and heartbreak, culminated in a tense atmosphere as the trial of Thomas Gray commenced in Eldridge Hollow. The once bustling town hall now stood as a somber arena where the community, united by grief and curiosity, awaited answers to a tragedy that had rattled their lives. As Detective Shepard took his seat in the audience, his heart raced. The room was thick with tension, adorned with the heavy silence that accompanies the search for justice. Sarah's family, stoic yet visibly shaken, occupied the front row. They had borne the weight of loss for far too long, and now they sought closure and clarity. The prosecution opened with a gripping narrative of Sarah's life, her vibrant talent, her aspirations, and ultimately, the horrific turn of events that led to her untimely demise. Witnesses detailed the encounter between Sarah and Thomas at the community event, illustrating the volatile relationship that had blossomed into a simmering resentment. "Thomas Gray was the last person seen near Sarah on the night she was killed," the prosecutor stated, drawing the audience's attention toward the timeline of events laid out before them. When it was Thomas's turn to take the stand, his demeanor shifted from defiance to vulnerability. "It wasn't me," he asserted, his voice shaky. "I was at home that night, alone. I know I have a past, but I didn't harm her." Shepard watched closely as the defense tried to plant doubt in jurors' minds over the reliability of eyewitnesses, and to dismantle the perception of Thomas's character as a volatile man to be feared. They suggested that the anonymous tipster could be fabricating the account, weaving a tale woven with mistrust. Yet the prosecution's timeline was reinforced by forensic evidence, a smattering of Sarah's blood found on Thomas's clothing, remnants overlooked in the rush of early investigations. It tied him to the scene in a way that could not be easily dismissed. As testimony progressed, the audience absorbed every nuance, a palpable heartbeat echoing through the courtroom. The trial became a microcosm of the town's grief, guilt, and the relentless quest for truth. Relationships frayed and suspicions grew ripe as the truth clawed its way into the open and intricate collage of jealousy, anger, and fear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the jury returned with their verdict. The judge's voice resonated throughout the silent room. We, the jury, find the defendant. The words hung heavy in the air, each syllable drenched in desperation. Guilty of second-degree murder. The verdict echoed in the hollow chamber, releasing a wave of relief and anguish. In that moment, closure for Sarah Lawson hung delicately in the balance, a bittersweet reflection of a life lost, wounds exposed, and the collective healing yet to unfold in Eldridge Hollow. The story of Sarah, the path to justice, would forever linger in the soul of the town, each resident carrying a piece of her legacy forward into the murky shadow of the past. The aftermath. In the weeks following the trial, the air in Eldridge Hollow was infused with a fragile tranquility, yet echoes of Sarah Lawson's presence clung tenaciously to the landscape. A conviction had been secured, but the town had not emerged unscathed. Its heart bore the weight of unresolved grief, and its pulse quickened with the need to heal. Detective Shepard returned to his daily routine, but the shadows of the case lingered in his mind. He often found himself revisiting the barn where Sarah was found. The lingering scent of hay and the ghost of laughter intertwined with sorrow. He had succeeded in bringing justice, yet unresolved questions about the deeper dynamics of Sarah's life gnawed at him. What choices had led her to that fateful night? How could the community move forward without ambivalence and fear? In the heart of Eldridge Hollow, Sarah's friends gathered for a memorial service to honor her life. The gallery, where her exhibit had been set to debut, had transformed into a place of remembrance. Easels dotted the space, adorned with her paintings that captured the vibrance of nature fields of wildflowers, sunsets ablaze with the hues of summer, and shimmering lakes reflecting the sky. They shared stories as they mourned her absence. Laughter mingled with tears as they recounted her quirks and talent. Yet a certain gravity lingered, reminding them of the fragility of life. Mia Sanders spoke with an emotional weight, her voice steady yet laced with sorrow. Sarah was the light in our lives. She believed in the beauty around us, and we need to continue to celebrate that beauty, not only in her art but in how we live. Her words hung in the air, an invocation for change and urging for the community to embrace kindness and connection, to seek understanding beneath the surface of conflict. As days turned into weeks, Eldridge Hollow began to reshape its identity, vowing to not let fear overshadow their unity. Art festivals celebrating local artists took root, nurturing the spirit of creativity that Sarah had embodied. And within the depths of his heart, Shepard felt the weight of purpose blossom within him. Perhaps the darkness of crime could give rise to clarity, encouraging others to express their grief through art and community. In the distance, against a backdrop of rolling hills, Shepard stood looking out at the horizontal expanse filled with possibilities. Though shadows had touched this town, they would not define it. The echoes of Sarah's laughter and vibrant spirit inspired change. And as the sun sank low, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, he felt the promise of hope rise anew. Eldridge Hollow would remember Sarah Lawson not merely as a victim but as a catalyst for transformation. the embodiment of a life lived with passion and purpose that transcended even the depths of tragedy. And perhaps in that, the town could reclaim its narrative, choosing to cultivate light among the darkness. Reflection. As the year progressed, the once muted vibrancy of Eldridge Hollow began to reawaken in a manner that felt both refreshing and transformative. Detective Shepard often strolled through the streets, observing the community's efforts to heal. The sculptures and murals emerging on public buildings served as both memorials to Sarah and invitations to dialogue. This was a town reclaiming its narrative, shifting its focus from tragedy to resilience. On one such evening, seated alone at a park bench with a cup of coffee, Shepard reflected on the case that had once consumed him. The darkness that had settled like a shroud over the town seemed to lift, revealing glimmers of hope as he recalled the faces of those who had rallied to honor Sarah's legacy. In many ways, her story had become a catalyst for change, encouraging people to confront their own grievances, fostering dialogues about mental health, grief, and vulnerability. He understood now that the depth of a community's spirit can surface even from the deepest wound. Sarah's passion for life and art forged connections that could not be broken merely by her absence. Instead, her light had illuminated pathways toward understanding and empathy among those who remained. As Shepard gazed at the vibrant sunset beyond the hills, he could hardly recognize the same town that had once been cloaked in despair. Eldridge Hollow, through all its complexities, had evolved strengthened by love and bravery in the face of adversity. Sarah Lawson had not only been an artist, she had become a symbol of transformation, a reminder of the impact one life can ripple across the fabric of a community, urging them to cherish the beauty and brightness they once took for granted.